Take three. I've started this so far 3 times and had to restart it because I'm a little nervous. I didn't anticipate doing a YouTube channel because there's a lot of people out there doing YouTube channels and so on. But I thought I'd try this because there's a lot of people, without going into great detail, that are unable to set my Shabbat table where we do our lessons, that have shown interest in knowing what we're covering. And I started to record an actual night at the house, but I didn't want to be worried about this video and neglect who was there, if that makes sense. I wanted to devote my attention on loving the people that are there and teaching the people that are actually there. But I thought I'd go ahead and put out the information on this so that you can reference it. You people that I meet at truck stops and rest areas and so on. And this movement is growing, and I'm meeting people all the time. Some of them, much to my surprise, that have started figuring some things out. So a few people have asked me to do this, very few, and others have shown interest when I said I'm thinking about doing it. So with no further ado, I'm going to cover, we're working on the Gospel of John. And what I've noticed in my studies in YouTube, and I have a lot of great people I could recommend, Tom Bradford, Rabbi Hirschberg, and so on. Tom Bradford especially, because he does a verse-by-verse teaching on the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. And it's great because it's verse by verse, and he adds a lot of hermeneutical context to it and so on. But I couldn't find anyone that was doing the New Testament with a Hebrew perspective, verse by verse, explaining what they've learned. So what I'm giving you is just scratching the surface, but I thought I'd go ahead and share what we are doing on Saturday nights. Now, these videos are going to be a little bit behind of what we're actually doing on Friday night, but that's a good thing. It gives me more time to think about it. And so with no further ado, we're going to start in John chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. And that's as far as we're going to get, because there is a lot to unpack in that once you understand the Hebrew perspective, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So in John 1, 1 and 2, it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning." Now, this is the complete Jewish version that I read from. I really like it a lot. It's not perfect, but I like the way it words things. Now, when I was growing up, I was told in the beginning was the Word. And they would flip over to John 1:14 and say the Word became a human being. In the King James, is the Word became flesh and lived with us. And we saw his glory, Shekinah in the Hebrew, and the Shekinah, glory of the Father, only Son, full of grace and truth. So they would say, see, the Word was Jesus. The Word was Yeshua. Well, I call him Yeshua. That's his Hebrew name. Yeshua actually means salvation, where Jesus is Greek, and I'm not going to get into that right now. But Yeshua became a human. The Word became a human being in Yeshua. However, the only word that the disciples had at the time was the Torah and the Tanakh. What we call the New Testament, which is a term that needs to be trashed as far as I'm concerned, for the Gospels and the Epistles and Revelation, didn't exist yet. When John wrote these words down, he had no idea he was writing something that would be called Scripture. He was documenting things, yes, and he knew that people would benefit from it, but to equate it to Scripture, he would have never, ever thought of that. Now, flip over to 2 Timothy 3:16, where Paul says to Timothy, this is a letter he was writing to Timothy. Okay, he didn't sit down and say, I'm going to write more Gospels. I'm going to write more Scripture. He wasn't doing it. He was writing a letter specifically to Timothy. All right, and he says in 3:16, 2 Timothy 3:16, all Scripture is God-breathed and is valuable for teaching the truth, convicting of sin, correcting of the faults, training in right living. Thus, anyone who belongs to God may be equipped for every good work. So he's telling Timothy that all Scripture, which at the time was the Torah and the Tanakh, is good, and that we should rely on it. Go back to John 1:14. We could change one word and it makes much more sense. And the Torah became flesh and became a human being and dwelt among us. John 1:1 and 2. In the beginning was the Torah, and the Torah was with God, and the Torah was God. He, Yeshua, was with God in the beginning. So all my life I've been told that the Torah was done away with. But yet we see here that Yeshua was the Torah in the flesh. Does it make sense that God would send his Son to become the Torah in flesh, his word, and then do away with it? You know, Yeshua in Matthew 5, I believe it is 5 or 7, well, Matthew says, not one jot or not one jot or tittle will be done away with. And yet we live in a Western society where the Torah is very inconvenient. Very inconvenient. I mean, once you just start keeping Sabbath on from Friday night to Saturday night, you'll see how inconvenient it is. As an employee, it is much easier to get Sunday off than it is to get Friday night through Saturday off. It's much easier because our society is geared towards that. But not even, let's face it, not even Sunday morning Christians for the most part are actually keeping Sabbath. And if they do, they go to church on Sunday and then go to eat and enjoy their shrimp or their pork and so on. And, you know, I won't even get into that yet. But meditate on John chapter 1, 1 and 2. Look into those verses. Test what I'm saying. See if I'm not right. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I've tested it myself, thinking I'm the minority. And it seems like every time I do, I just get more and more convinced that the way to be fully equipped and to draw closer to Yeshua is to understand and follow in obedience to the Torah. I have a friend of mine, I'm at 8 minutes now, just checking. A friend of mine that always talked about to his congregation, go deeper with Yeshua, go deeper with Yeshua, go deeper with Yeshua. I agree. We need to go deeper with Yeshua. But if Yeshua was the living Torah and we're trying to go deeper with Yeshua without going deeper into the Torah, we're kind of spinning our wheels, aren't we? Anyway, this is my first YouTube video. Hope you like it. Like, share, subscribe, whatever you do. I don't care. I'm not out to develop a great big YouTube following, all right? But if you think people will benefit from this, well, sure, share it. You know, leave your comments as long as they're polite. I'd love to hear them. Yeah, iron sharpens iron, but love with love, because you know, a lot of times people can get pretty nasty in their comments. They'd say things in the comments they'd never say to someone's face. If I feel like you're being rude, this is not going to be a democracy when it comes to that. It will be a dictatorship, and if I feel like someone's being rude or off base, you will be deleted. Okay, so hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it, and shalom.